bona fide action star until he entered the billion-dollar Fast and Furious franchise.
For years, audiences believed Tyrese Gibson and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson weren't just co-stars in Fast and Furious. They were brothers. On screen, the franchise sold them as family. Loyal, unshakable, and united under the banner of speed and loyalty. Off-screen, red carpets, interviews, and photo spreads reinforced the illusion. Fans embraced it. The Fast family seemed unbreakable. But behind the engines and smiles, the truth was different. As the franchise grew into a billion-dollar machine, cracks began to show. By 2017, the illusion collapsed in front of millions. Tyrese launched into a now infamous Instagram rant, calling The Rock selfish for putting his own spin-off, Hobbs and Shaw, ahead of the main saga. Entertainment Weekly headlined it bluntly, "Fast Family Feud." Suddenly, what looked like brotherhood turned into betrayal. Was it always there? Resentment simmering beneath the glossy magazine covers and studio-driven family narrative? Or did ambition, money, and power break a genuine bond? This feud raised an uncomfortable question. In Hollywood, can friendship survive when fame and fortune are on the line? Or was it all just another performance, scripted as carefully as the stunts? Transition. To answer, we have to look back at how this family was first constructed. When Fast 5 roared into theaters in 2011, the franchise transformed from a street racing saga into a global blockbuster. A key factor in that leap was the introduction of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as Luke Hobbs, a relentless federal agent who clashed with, then joined, Dominic Toretto's crew. His arrival didn't just raise the stakes on screen, it reshaped the chemistry of the cast itself. From the start, Universal's marketing team recognized the power of this new dynamic. Tyrese Gibson, already a fan favorite for his comic timing as Roman Pierce, played off The Rock's intensity with ease. Together, they became part of the carefully curated Fast family narrative. Red carpets showcased them side by side, flashing identical grins. Talk shows like The Tonight Show and Ellen booked the cast as a unit, reinforcing the idea of unity. By 2013, the studio doubled down. Entertainment Weekly released a cover story titled "Fast Family," featuring the ensemble shoulder to shoulder, projected as inseparable. At the premiere of Fast and Furious 6 that same year, Tyrese called The Rock "my brother," pulling him into an embrace for the cameras. To the millions watching at home, the bond looked genuine, unshakable. And then came tragedy. In 2015, Paul Walker's death cast a shadow over the franchise. Yet in the aftermath, the public image of solidarity only intensified. Interviews turned emotional, with Tyrese and The Rock both emphasizing how much the cast leaned on one another. At Walker's tribute, they stood together, embodying the very message the studio wanted to sell, that the Fast saga wasn't just about cars and heists, it was about family. The imagery was powerful. Magazine spreads, glossy promotional shoots, and carefully edited behind-the-scenes footage created the impression of brothers bonded for life. Each appearance, whether it was Tyrese praising The Rock's discipline in interviews, or Johnson acknowledging the ensemble as his family, added another brick to the illusion. But this wasn't only about personal bonds. Universal had a strategic interest in presenting the cast as unified. A billion-dollar franchise thrives on loyalty, not just between characters but between actors and fans. Every handshake on the red carpet, every synchronized laugh on talk shows, every staged photo spread served the same purpose: to reinforce the narrative that what you saw on screen was real. Behind closed doors, creative and contractual tensions already simmered, but the public never saw that. What they saw was a family moving in sync, an image so polished it became hard to question. After all, who would doubt a bond sealed by tears at Paul Walker's memorial, by smiles on magazine covers, by endless talk show banter about being brothers? This wasn't coincidence. It was branding, a studio-driven myth designed to keep fans invested not just in the films, but in the relationships that fueled them. And the more the world believed in this narrative, the harder it became to separate reality from performance. Illusion hardened into truth. For a time, the illusion of unity held. But as the Fast and Furious franchise grew, so did the pressures behind the curtain. When Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson joined in 2011, his sheer star power was undeniable. Hobbs, his character, quickly became central to the series' global identity. For Universal, this was a gift. Johnson brought WWE fans, mainstream recognition, and the aura of a box office anchor. For others in the cast, however, the spotlight felt uneven. Tyrese Gibson, who had been part of the ensemble since Too and Fast 2 Furious in 2003, suddenly found his own presence overshadowed. Roman Pierce, once comic relief with heart, now risked being reduced to background noise beside Hobbs' towering presence. The tension wasn't spoken aloud, but it lingered. By 2016, financial disparities fueled the whispers. Forbes reported on the staggering salaries within Fast 8. Johnson ranked among Hollywood's highest-paid actors, earning tens of millions per project. In contrast, Tyrese's figure was far lower. The imbalance wasn't just about money. It symbolized hierarchy. Who got to negotiate power, control, and creative say? And who didn't? Scheduling only deepened the divide. Johnson's dual commitments to WWE appearances and solo blockbusters, San Andreas, Jumanji, Rampage, meant he wasn't always present for press tours or promotional events. To fans, his absence seemed minor. But to Tyrese, who valued group appearances as proof of family, it was another quiet betrayal. On Twitter and Instagram, he began leaving cryptic comments. A smiling cast photo without Johnson. A caption that seemed to ask, "Where's the family?" The absences formed a pattern too consistent to ignore. And then came the subtler signs. Social media silence between the two men spoke volumes. While Tyrese tagged Vin Diesel, Ludacris, and other castmates in celebratory posts, The Rock's name was missing. Fans noticed. Blogs pieced together timelines, noting the lack of joint photos, the absence of birthday shout-outs. For a duo once presented as inseparable, the silence was deafening. Beneath these public signals was a clash of working styles. Johnson, known for his obsessive discipline, arrived early, rehearsed meticulously, and demanded efficiency. His ethic was military grade, a reflection of both his wrestling past and his global brand management. Tyrese, in contrast, thrived on improvisation, bringing humor spontaneously, vibing with castmates, letting scenes breathe. On set, this difference could spark friction. To some, it was simply two approaches colliding. To others, it was oil and water. The tension reached a new level in 2017. In a now infamous Instagram post, The Rock described some of his male co-stars as candy asses, a cryptic insult that sparked speculation across tabloids. He didn't name names, but fans dissected every word, every expression on set photos, every subtle shift in body language. Was he talking about Tyrese, Vin Diesel, or both? The ambiguity only fanned the flames. Meanwhile, Tyrese's own frustration leaked in increasingly pointed ways. His captions grew sharper, hinting at betrayal without naming Johnson directly. The fan base, once united in celebrating the franchise, began to divide into camps. By the time the world noticed, the cracks were no longer whispers among insiders. They were visible to anyone paying attention. The image of brotherhood had begun to crumble, exposed not by official statements, but by silences, absences, and cryptic jabs scattered across interviews and social feeds. Cracks were no longer rumors. The cracks became undeniable in 2017, when Universal Pictures announced a major shift in the franchise's trajectory. Instead of moving directly into Fast 9, the studio revealed plans for a spin-off centered on Dwayne Johnson's Luke Hobbs and Jason Statham's Deckard Shaw. The project, later titled Hobbs and Shaw, was scheduled for a summer release, forcing the 9th installment of the main saga to be delayed. For Tyrese Gibson, this was more than a scheduling inconvenience. To him, it symbolized betrayal. Almost immediately, he took to Instagram, launching a furious post directed squarely at Johnson. "Congratulations to The Rock for making the Fast and Furious franchise about you." In another outburst, Tyrese accused Johnson of breaking apart what the studio and fans had spent years calling a family. His words were sharp, personal, and emotional. He broke up the family. The media storm was instantaneous. TMZ reported on the feud within hours, framing it as a civil war inside Hollywood's most profitable ensemble franchise. Variety published headlines echoing the drama. Fast family divided. Across social media, hashtags like #Fast Family Divide began trending, with fans arguing over loyalty. Some sympathized with Tyrese, seeing him as a veteran sidelined for a superstar's ego. Others defended Johnson, pointing out that spin-offs were a natural evolution for a franchise this large. The Rock, for his part, never engaged directly. He avoided naming Tyrese in interviews, never responding to the barrage of posts. Instead, he moved forward with the spin-off's production, posting upbeat updates from the set of Hobbs and Shaw. While Tyrese painted him as selfish, Johnson positioned himself as focused, professional, and above the noise. The contrast only fueled speculation. Was his silence a sign of restraint or of indifference? For the fan base, the fallout was messy. Longtime supporters of the series had been conditioned to embrace the family narrative. Suddenly, that family was publicly fracturing. Memes pitted Gibson against Johnson. Comment sections turned into battlegrounds. Entertainment outlets dissected every word, every Instagram story, every red carpet absence. And Universal? The studio leaned into the chaos. The controversy, though unplanned, kept Fast and Furious in the headlines even without a mainline release that year. By the time Hobbs and Shaw hit theaters in 2019, anticipation was high, not just for the action, but for the behind-the-scenes drama fans knew about. The film opened strong, with a $60 million domestic debut and an eventual $760 million global box office haul. Johnson's star power seemed untouchable. Tyrese, meanwhile, struggled to shake the narrative. His social media rants were replayed across entertainment news, often overshadowing his own work. Instead of being seen as the loyal brother of the franchise, he was cast as the emotional agitator, the man who had taken the feud public. In the end, the damage wasn't limited to reputations. The scandal permanently altered how audiences viewed the Fast family. What once felt authentic now looked like marketing spin, and no amount of red carpet smiles could hide the reality. The brotherhood had broken. The mask shattered in public. The fallout from the feud rippled far beyond Instagram posts and entertainment headlines. It reshaped careers, rewrote franchise dynamics, and exposed the fragility of Hollywood's carefully crafted illusions. For Tyrese Gibson, the damage was swift. Once seen as the franchise's comic heartbeat, he was now branded by the press as the angry little brother of the Fast family. His impassioned social media tirades, though rooted in loyalty to the ensemble, came across to many as petty, bitter, and unprofessional. Headlines framed him not as a defender of family values, but as a man consumed by jealousy over Dwayne Johnson's success. Interviews he gave in 2018 and 2019 only cemented that narrative, as Gibson continued to insist that Johnson had broken the family apart. Johnson, in stark contrast, remained silent. His refusal to trade barbs publicly became part of his brand. The unshakable professional, too focused on delivering blockbusters to be dragged down by drama. When Hobbs and Shaw finally premiered in 2019, its box office proved him right. Opening at $60 million domestically and grossing more than $760 million worldwide, the spin-off demonstrated that Johnson's star power extended well beyond the Fast saga. For Universal, the message was clear. The Rock wasn't just another member of the family. He was a franchise in his own right. Meanwhile, the absence of Johnson in Fast 9 was impossible to ignore. Released in 2021, the film leaned heavily on Vin Diesel's leadership and the return of familiar faces, but something felt incomplete, critics noticed. The Guardian published a piece bluntly titled, "Fast and Furious Without The Rock Feels Incomplete." Audience scores reflected the sentiment. On Rotten Tomatoes, Fast 9 landed at a lukewarm 59%. Respectable, but lacking the energy of earlier installments that had The Rock's larger-than-life presence. For Tyrese, the saga rolled on. He continued his role as Roman Pierce, bringing humor and heart to the films, but the shadow of the feud lingered. Every press tour, every reunion photo was viewed through the lens of what was missing. The dream of reconciliation with Johnson seemed distant, if not impossible. Even when Vin Diesel publicly urged Johnson to return for future installments, Johnson declined, making it clear that the split was permanent. The media, ever hungry for closure, framed the situation as a cautionary tale. How one feud revealed the tension between loyalty and ambition in Hollywood. Think pieces asked whether the family branding was ever more than a marketing ploy, and whether audiences had been complicit in believing it. What began as a personal clash had evolved into a cultural conversation about authenticity in celebrity friendships. For the franchise itself, the consequences were paradoxical. On one hand, Johnson's departure weakened the chemistry that had carried the films into global dominance. On the other, it forced the saga to reckon with its own narrative, to find ways to keep fans invested without leaning too heavily on a single superstar. The absence became a character. The feud between Tyrese Gibson and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson did more than divide fans or delay a sequel. It challenged the very foundation of the Fast and Furious mythology, the idea of family. For nearly 2 decades, Universal had built the franchise around this narrative, using it as both storytelling glue and marketing slogan. But when 2 prominent members of that family fell out so publicly, the illusion cracked. Suddenly, audiences were forced to confront a truth Hollywood rarely admits, that what looks like brotherhood on screen may not exist behind the camera. This wasn't just about bruised egos or delayed projects. It became a cultural lesson. Hollywood has long relied on the power of chemistry, of presenting co-stars as confidants, siblings, even lifelong friends. The strategy sells movies because it sells authenticity. Fans want to believe the connections they see are real. Yet Tyrese versus The Rock became a cautionary tale, reminding viewers that even the most convincing brotherhood can be nothing more than a studio-crafted product. As the feud dragged on, fans became more media literate. They began reading the seams of PR campaigns, noticing when words like family or brother felt too polished, too rehearsed. Social media amplified this awareness. Comment threads filled with skepticism. Was this bond genuine, or was it always about box office returns? The legacy of this clash is therefore double-edged. On one side, audiences still love the films. The car chases, the stunts, the ensemble banter. They remain cultural touchstones. On the other, those same audiences now approach Hollywood narratives with sharper eyes, no longer taking "we're like family" at face value. The Tyrese-Rock feud sits alongside other behind-the-scenes rifts, like the more widely publicized tension between Vin Diesel and The Rock, as evidence that blockbuster egos often collide with franchise unity. Industry voices echoed this. A 2021 Variety feature, tellingly titled "Fast Family Rift Shows the Cost of Blockbuster Egos," argued that Hollywood's reliance on myth-making has a breaking point. When stars clash, no amount of PR spin can fully repair the illusion. Instead, the feud itself becomes part of the franchise's legacy, forever shaping how fans interpret the films. In hindsight, Tyrese and The Rock's public unraveling wasn't just gossip. It was a cultural marker. It showed how fragile Hollywood friendships can be when confronted with money, fame, and creative control. It also underscored a broader truth. In the blockbuster era, the brand often matters more than the bonds that supposedly sustain it. The result is a legacy both powerful and unsettling. Fans continue to cheer for the Fast and Furious saga, but they do so with a lingering question in mind. If family can fracture so easily behind the scenes, how much of it was ever real? Was it friendship, or was it performance all along? So after all the headlines, the Instagram rants, and the billion-dollar box office, one question lingers. Did Tyrese Gibson and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson ever share a real friendship, or was it always a performance crafted for the cameras? Their story exposes both the fragility of human bonds and the machinery of Hollywood that profits from selling the illusion of family. What do you think? Was this a brotherhood torn apart by ambition, or a studio myth exposed under pressure? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspective. And if you enjoyed uncovering the truth behind the Fast family, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss more untold Hollywood stories we're bringing your way. Because in Hollywood, even family can be scripted.